Welcome back to SportsLine here on News Channel 5 Plus. Jon Burton with you on a Wednesday evening, the Wednesday extravaganza. So much going on locally here with the Titans and Preds and more. Who better than to tell us all about it and to make sense of it all than our good friend from SI.com who covers the Titans and Preds locally, Nashville SC as well. John Glennon joins us via Zoom from his palatial estate in beautiful Bellevue, Tennessee, where I reside. Johnny, good evening. Thanks for being on tonight, buddy.
Thanks for having me on, Johnny. I appreciate it. Good evening to you as well.
Yeah, all right, well, let's start with the Titans. We just heard from Austin Hooper, his introductory press conference the other day. Kind of a laid-back dude, man. It'd be interesting to see how he works with Mike Vrabel. What do you think he can add to this offense? Because obviously, the tight end position was definitely an area of need for the Titans this offseason.
Yeah, and it was kind of interesting to me, when the Titans re-signed Jeff Swaim, maybe a week or two earlier. There was a lot of blowback among the fans, and people were saying, "I can't believe this is happening," as if they thought that Jeff Swaim was now going to be the marquee guy, the number one tight end. And I think it was pretty clear that was never going to be the case. But I think Austin Hooper provides that excellent pass catching option from the tight end spot that they just haven't really had. They didn't really have last year. This guy put up huge numbers in Atlanta. Now he's not going to put up those numbers here in Tennessee. It's not that kind of offense. But he's going to at least provide more of an option than what we saw from the Titans tight ends last year. And if he can get back anywhere close to that level that he had in Atlanta, I think the Titans are in good shape. And he's a solid enough run blocker, so I think he'll help in that regard as well. I still think when you look at that position, the tight end position, I still think there's another addition to be made. Probably for the in the draft. I think you still need maybe use one of those fourth-round picks, maybe even a third-round pick, get another tight end because there was a lot of them out there, and you get another good tight end out of the draft, all of a sudden that position, which was looking pretty barren, just a couple of weeks ago, I think is looking a lot better.
Yeah, and I think it's a deal, John, that, I think both teams benefit from. It's a one-year prove-it deal. Hooper is out to obviously prove that, his lack of production in Cleveland was not his doing. It was more or less Kevin Stefanski's offense and really, quite frankly, not very good quarterback play from Baker Mayfield. And the Titans get the guy they need at a position they need, and it's not costing them a lot of money to see him, to have him go out there for 1 year and show what he can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, anytime you're a player and you're on your contract year, and this is a one-year contract, so I think there's that extra little motivation in there. In the back of your head, you're thinking, I have to make something happen this year because I don't have the fallback, the security of added years there. And frankly, I think Hooper sounded like a guy who was motivated too by the fact that he sounded sort of baffled by his years in Cleveland in some respects because they paid him some good money up there, but they didn't really make him a focal point of the offense. And he sounded a little confused by that, and I think he's looking forward to being more of a target in this Titans offense. And I think he's going to get those chances too. I think in a play action offense like the Titans have, and the way they have used the way they have used tight ends in the past, I think he'll get a chance to earn another nice contract.
Elsewhere, of course, they make the trade to bring in Robert Woods. I mean, I'll give John Robinson credit. This guy's going to trade for wide receivers until he gets it right. Julio Jones last year, Robert Woods now. We'll talk about his injury in just a second, but assuming he's healthy and ready to go this season, what do you think he gives the Titans offense, and what kind of compliment do you think he could be / will be with A.J. Brown?
Yeah, that is, of course, the big assumption, as you said, about the injury. But assuming that is okay, I think he should be an excellent, compliment to A.J. Brown. This is a guy, when you look at his production, he's on the verge of 30, and in wide receiver talk, that's pretty old in the NFL. You're when you hit 30, it's a little bit scary. But this guy, the 3 years before last season when he got hurt, consistency in production very high. It was about 90 catches a year, about 1,000 yards, and about 5 or 6 touchdowns a year. So I think it's a great option. Last year I don't think that chemistry between Ryan Tannehill and Julio Jones ever took. Julio Jones missed so much time, training camp throughout the season. I don't think he ever turned into that option that the Titans, needed him to be. And again, if that injury heals up, I think you're looking at that guy in Robert Woods. And let's throw in a couple other things too. The fact that he is an excellent run blocker, probably one of the best, if not the best in the NFL, can't hurt with this offense that is still, focused on Derrick Henry. He should be a big help in that regard. And frankly, it's just gonna, there were so many times last year I feel like we saw Ryan Tannehill drop back and kind of lock in on A.J. Brown too often. That was the guy he had so much trust in. Well, I think the hope for the Titans is that, that Robert Woods will develop into that second option that's not going to require Tannehill to be so completely focused in on A.J. Brown.
Along the offensive line, John, obviously Roger Saffold is gone. He's now with the Buffalo Bills. They do re-sign Ben Jones, which I think was a good move for them. He's obviously a glue guy, not only on that offensive line, but on this team as a whole. But who do you think fills that LG spot? Are we talking Aaron Brewer here? Will they draft someone? They made it clear that Dylan Radins is really not NFL ready at the moment, which is curious when you consider they spent the second-round pick on him.
Yes, a year after they spent the first-round pick on a right tackle that, of course, never worked out either. Right. I think if they could find some clarity on Dylan Radins, both in terms of position and whether you really expect him to be a starter at some point or not, I think that kind of helps you figure out what your needs are as well. But right now, you're down two starters. And, I think everybody liked Aaron Brewer and what he brought to the table as a reserve and as a spot starter. He's a scrappy guy, a battler, but he's not the biggest guy. And I don't think that just because you're a scrappy reserve necessarily means you're the next starter. And I'm not sure that, as we just talked about, I'm not sure Dylan Radins is that guy either, because like the last snapshot we have of Dylan Radins is the Cincinnati playoff game. He's inactive. He's a healthy scratch behind 8 other defensive linemen that included Brewer and Kendall Lamb at the time as well, which, doesn't seem to bode too well. And then, of course, at right tackle, they didn't re-sign David Quesenberry. Still a thought that he might come back, but I don't think they look for him to be a starter either. So I think, either one of those two positions, left guard or right tackle, along with wide receiver, should probably be priorities in the draft. I think that's where you got to turn with for the first round pick and the third round pick also, some combination of those groups, because I really think I keep coming back to the fact, how many times did we hear, both Mike Vrabel and John Robinson say that if we can keep the pocket clear for Ryan Tannehill, if we can keep the pressure off him, we really think, he is still an excellent passer. That was not the case last year. But I think if they make that a priority again, I think the odds of Tannehill bouncing back are that much better.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question, right, with Tannehill. But what about the Titans overall, John? They talk about the championship window. It's obviously still open for them, but, you take a look at what's going on in the AFC, how these teams are loading up, especially at the quarterback position. I have a hard time believing the Titans can win the number 1 seed again next year. I really think their focus has to be, let's not worry about what these other teams are doing. Let's focus on winning our division and going from there. Because, like I said, the chances of them getting a 1 seed next year, when you see how other teams are stacked up in the AFC, it would seem to be pretty slim right now. What say you?
I would agree. I mean, it's been an incredible arms race here for the AFC here in the offseason. It's been interesting to watch in free agency. I want to say like 70% of kind of the bigger name and bigger salary free agents have gone from NFC to AFC as opposed to vice versa. So, we're seeing some of the big, the rich get richer in the AFC. It's a very good thing in that regard that the Titans are bringing back Harold Landry, I think, because the way this defense finished in terms of pass rush, and especially when you consider you have to think Bud Dupree is going to take things up another notch next year. I think he's going to be healthier, feel better for an entire year. I think you're going to need that kind of defense to be sort of the equalizing factor, because on the other side of the ball, there are still question marks for the Titans. We talked about, is Robert Woods going to come back from that injury? Is Derrick Henry going to be 100% back from the foot injury? Are the Titans going to be able to fill those offensive line holes adequately? So while you still have some question marks on that offense, you better have the kind of defense that the Titans finished with last year to give yourself a shot against some of these marquee teams, especially who do the Titans play this year in terms of AFC competition? The AFC West is absolutely loaded in terms of the talent this year, for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We're talking with John Glennon from SI.com. John, if you don't mind, a couple of minutes on the Predators. First of all, the trade deadline comes and goes. I never bought for 1 second that David Poile was considering shopping Philip Forsberg in a trade. To me, this guy's a forever Predator. And I really think the fact that the trade deadline came and went and he's still on this team, it's a good sign to me that they're going to get a long-term deal done. Do you feel that way as well, or what say you?
I think so. I would put money on them getting a long-term deal done. I didn't believe that they were going to send him elsewhere at the deadline either. I know, that a lot of teams take that approach, that if you don't have a guy signed past that year, you hit the deadline, you got to move him, because that's when he is going to be at his most marketable. That's when teams are most desperate to bring in a star. But, if you're David Poile and you're the Predators, how do you do that? Your team is in a playoff spot. Mm-hmm. Your team has beaten some of the top teams in the league and shown it can at least compete on a regular basis with some very good teams. How do you say to your team, sorry, guys, we got to worry about the long run. Sorry about the fact you're in playoff position. We're dealing the guy who's having a career year, who's on pace for 40 or 50 goals and more. In addition to that, how do you say that to your fan base too? You're basically saying we're more or less, giving up in a lot of ways on this year. Maybe we'll make the playoffs, maybe we don't, and I don't think you can do that to the fan base. So yeah, I didn't really see them moving Forsberg. Another thing, and again, I do believe, as you do, that this is eventually going to end up as a long-term deal. I think it's going to be a win situation. But even if the Preds can't seem to find common ground with Philip Forsberg, you can still deal him after the season. Now, you might not get quite the haul that you would at the trading deadline, but still, you're going to have a heck of a market for a 27-year-old forward who's coming off a 40 or 50 goal season, this is his third 30-goal season in the league and so forth. It's not as if the market is going to fall apart by any stretch out there. So I think there's still that card in the back pocket if the Predators absolutely, can't find that common ground and need to deal Philip Forsberg. But it sounds very much to me that both sides want to make it happen, and in time will.
I agree with you, John. Just the Predators as a whole, looks like they're a lock to make the playoffs. What's their ceiling? How far can they go? I don't know if they can beat a team like Colorado in 7 games. I doubt it. What say you?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I think if you're the Predators right now, one of the most important things as you head down the end of the regular season is maybe trying to finish second or third in the Central Division. That way, at least you open up against a lesser opponent. You're not taking on Colorado in the first round or Calgary in the first round, and maybe you can work your way up. Who knows? Maybe Colorado and Calgary get softened up eventually as things move along, and you have a better shot at beating them. One of the things I do like about the Predators, though, is that they are a heavy physical team. Mm-hmm. That style generally does pay dividends in the NHL playoffs. We've seen teams in recent years like the Blues, the Bruins in recent years that have won Stanley Cups, even going back to the Capitals also, that have been those heavy pounding teams that tend to wear on you as a series goes on, as the playoffs go on as well. So that may work to the Predators' favor. And again, they have showed they can compete and beat some of these top teams. It's just a question of can they do that 4 times out of 7? But when you've got UC Saros back there, and when he is on his game, he is probably one of the best, if not the best goalie in the league. That's another wild card that the Preds have in their favor too.
Yeah, UC Saros has made a believer out of me. I owe that guy an apology. I did not think this guy was a top-notch #1 goaltender. Shows how much I know, John. That's why I have people like you on the show. Get your plugs in real quick. How can people keep up with your outstanding work, my friend?
Outstanding. I like it. Yes. Well, the easiest way is to give me a follow on Twitter, Glennon Sports on Twitter. As you said, I'm covering the Titans for SI.com. David Beauclair and I turning out all kinds of stories. And then also, if you want to take a look at NHL.com, I am covering the Predators for NHL.com too. So give us a look for the coverage there.
Oh, yes, the old Robbie Stanley beat, friend of show. We love Robbie. And
That's right.
We love you too,
right,
Johnny. Have a wonderful evening. Thanks for stopping by. We do appreciate it, sir.
Thank you, Johnny. Appreciate it.
All right, there he goes, John Glennon from SI.com and NHL.com. Definitely give him a follow and a look for his outstanding work. All right, when we come back, we're going to hear from the newest Titans wide receiver, Robert Woods, having his introductory press conference today over at St. Thomas Sports Park. We'll get to that right after this on SportsLine.